All right, let's dive into one of theology's absolute toughest questions. Now, we're going to tackle this from a very specific angle. It's a heavy topic for sure, but the logic we're about to unpack is honestly pretty fascinating. So let's just get right into it. Okay, so let's just get straight to the heart of the matter. This question right here. I mean, this is the central tension, isn't it? How could a loving creator make some people just to reject them? It feels like a total paradox, but what if that whole question is built on a shaky foundation? The source material we're looking at today argues that it just might be. So, here's how we're going to break this down. First, we'll look at why the question itself might be a little off. Then we'll dig into the idea that choice actually comes first. After that, we'll explore the reason for spiritual blindness and how rejection is seen as a consequence, not a cause. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with the big takeaway. All right, first up, the choice comes first. The whole argument we're digging into today really hinges on one single crucial idea, the order of events. The big question is who makes the first move. And this really frames the two different ways of looking at it perfectly. The common assumption, right, is that God rejects someone, and then they're unable to believe. It's a top-down thing. But the perspective we're exploring completely flips that on its head. It argues that people reject God first, and then God simply honors that choice. It's not an initial action, it's a reaction. And check this out. This verse really highlights the whole idea. Just look at the way it's phrased. It starts with, since they did not think it worthwhile. That's the cause. Then it says, so God gave them over. That's the effect, you see? The human action comes before the divine reaction. It's a critical sequence. So let's break that sequence down. The main point is that God's rejection isn't what causes someone's unbelief. It's the result of it. He withdraws the ability to hear from people who have already refused to listen. So it's not that he predestined their rejection from the start. It's that he foresaw it. The choice to love sin comes first, and only then does the grace get withdrawn. Okay, so that leads us to our next section, the reason for blindness. If people are the ones who reject truth first, well, what happens after that? This is where the idea of a spiritual blindness comes in, and it's described as a direct result of that initial choice. You hear this term a lot in the source material, a hardened heart. And the way it's presented, this isn't something God just does to someone out of the blue. It's more like a condition that develops over time. It's a kind of spiritual dullness that sets in when someone consistently, again and again, chooses to value something else more than the truth. And here's how that process is laid out. It's basically a chain reaction. Step 1, it starts with a love of sin, a consistent choice. Step 2, that choice starts to make the heart dull and unreceptive. Step 3, this leads to an active, conscious rejection of God's message. And only then, at the very end of this chain, does God step in and essentially confirm their choice by allowing them to become blind to the very truth they've already pushed away. Now, this verse from Isaiah is really central to the whole argument. And yeah, I know, at first glance, it sounds incredibly harsh, right? Make the heart of this people dull, lest they see and be healed. But within the framework we're exploring, the interpretation is totally different. It's seen as God saying, okay, since they've made it crystal clear they don't want to turn and be healed, I'm going to honor that. I won't force them. The blindness becomes the final confirmation of a choice they've already made. Which brings us to the real core of the argument, viewing this whole thing as a consequence, not a cause. It's all about reframing God's action as something that honors free will instead of violating it. Honestly, if there's only one thing you remember from all of this, let it be this right here. According to this perspective, divine rejection is never the first move on the chessboard, ever. It's always a countermove. It is a reaction to a choice that has already been freely made. And this table just lays out the pattern so clearly. Look down the left column. That's the human cause. They refused to listen, they refused to know God, they didn't love the truth, they chose their own ways. Now look at the right column, the divine effect. He let them go, he gave them over, he let them believe a lie. See the pattern? It's consistently framed as God letting them have what they already chose. So what's the big deal? Why does this distinction matter so much? Well, in this view, the whole system is built on the incredible value of free will. Think about it. If God just forced salvation on people who consistently and deliberately rejected him, what would that even mean? It would make the idea of a genuine, freely chosen love completely meaningless. Okay, let's wrap this up with the final takeaway. What are the big implications of looking at things this way? So, let's boil it down. First, this view puts human responsibility front and center. Your spiritual outcome is heavily tied to your choices. Second, divine rejection isn't some arbitrary act. It's framed as the respected consequence of a choice. Third, God's sovereignty isn't about puppet mastering, but about his perfect foreknowledge of our free choices. And finally, all this argues against the idea of an arbitrary God who would create people just for damnation. So to put it as simply as possible, in this view, God doesn't predestine people for rejection. Instead, he honors the path that he already knew they would freely choose for themselves. He isn't forcing the path, he's respecting the destination. And all of this leaves us with one final massive question to chew on. This whole framework places an incredible amount of weight on human choice. But how does that really truly coexist with the idea of an all-powerful sovereign God? The source we looked at gives us one answer. But, the debate on this one is far from over. It's a tension that sits right at the very heart of faith, philosophy, and what it even means to choose.